Okay, guys, we got to get to some emergency news, some real emergency news. One of the elders of one of the greatest generations of black men has passed away. I know you guys heard of it. Reverend Jesse Jackson has passed away today at the age of 84. Rest in peace to the elder Jesse Jackson. He was a great man. Just a little bit about Jesse Jackson. There's quite a few things. Jesse Jackson is a very interesting figure in the liberation movement for black people, especially if you're here in the United States of America. A little bit about Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson was born in South Carolina in 1941. He also attended college in Chicago at a seminary college where he got his master's degree. He almost got it, but then he stopped. And then he also joined the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that was ran by Martin Luther King and a guy called Bevel. Now, Bevel's a very important figure too. You might not have heard of him. Most people haven't heard of these guys. Martin Luther King took up a lot of space. But anyway, so he went to college, he got into theology as a pastor, then he got into community organization. He fell under Dr. King as one of King's aides, as one of his proteges, and whatnot. Then he also did the sit-ins, the whole Selma thing. He was there for that when they were across the bridge and they were attacked by police officers. Yeah. So with Selma, what else did he do here? He headed the Breadbasket campaign. Bevel and Martin Luther King chose him in Chicago to lead the Breadbasket campaign, the operation of Breadbasket and whatnot. Now, from my understanding, Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King used to say that Jesse Jackson was very ambitious. He used to always wanted more. Then after that, he also with that Breadbasket campaign, Operation Breadbasket, he led boycotts. So like Save a Business took a lot of money of ours, like Nike, Pepsi, Coca-Cola. They would boycott them and say, hey, guys, we spend a lot of money with you. You guys don't hire us. What's going on? So they would lead boycotts. We don't do this anymore because all these institutions like the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, they don't exist anymore. We don't have these institutions. Remember I said we need institutions? We've lost all of our institutions. We have none. Only institution we have is Def Jam and rap labels. But anyway, so after Martin Luther King passed, Jesse Jackson, we're going to get to that. Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King's assassination is it's a lot of theories out there. But he fell out with the Southern leader, the SCLC, in 1971, and he was suspended as the leader of the Operation of Breadbasket by Bevel and those guys. And then he started in 1984 the Rainbow Coalition. He ran for president. He was the second one. What was the guy's name? Stockholm or something like that. Another black man ran for president before that, but he ran as a Democrat. And then he started Jesse Jackson, and I don't want to talk bad about the brother he's gone, but we need to have this conversation. Jesse Jackson's career is very awkward because it's like after Martin Luther King passed away, he was that guy. You know what I mean? To where it almost begged the question for a lot of people, what exactly? Look, when we talk about a lot of the African American leaders, we all understand, like most of them, if you look at how they were assassinated, betrayed, like Malcolm X, it all comes from the inner circle, right? Malcolm X was killed by the NYFOI using the federal government. That was when the head of FBI was Edgar, James Edgar, who was the head of the FBI, and God knows, and one day we're going to have to ask God, why did he let him live so long? J. Edgar Hoover, I'm sorry. Why did he let him live so long? Because he was there from Marcus Garvey all the way to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. Do you know what I mean? That's like 50 years. J. Edgar Hoover was there when, in the 20s, that's when he first started in the FBI. They literally created FBI for African Americans, American Africans, all the way to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King to the 60s, so the 20s. He had a reign. So anyway, J. Edgar Hoover would use people within the organizations to assassinate a Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, right? And so when we look at Martin Luther King's assassination, there's a lot of questions, right? Just to say another point, because people are going to say, what do you mean? This is not only a American phenomenon. This is going across the globe. If you look in Africa, you look at Thomas Sankara. He was murdered by his second in command. He was president of Burkina Faso, one of the forefathers of Pan-Africanism. Look at Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. He was murdered by his military leader. Look at Bakasso in Congo. He was murdered by his cousin. And you look at Malcolm X, the NOI, Muammar Gaddafi, his own people. We as a people, as black people, have a problem. We allow outsiders to dictate our leaders for us in a certain sense. They'll find a disgruntled lackey, right, of some major movement leader, and they'll get to him and say, hey, I know you know you're supposed to be there. He's not better than you. And so with Jesse Jackson, we're not making any allegations, but what we're going to say is, okay, so these are the pictures of Martin Luther King on the day that he passed away, right? So this is the infamous picture, right? We all know this picture, the one where they're pointing to where the shooter was shooting from. Later on, we find out that's not the direction the shooter was shooting from. He was shooting from some bushes, right? And then we also find out the person that was supposedly the person that was supposed to assassinate Martin Luther King, we find out he didn't even do it. James Earl Ray, right? We find out he's on his deathbed. He tells Coretta Scott King. She comes to him, James Earl Ray, on his deathbed and says, did you kill him? Like, just tell me. The guy said, no, I didn't. I was set up. J. Edgar Hoover and that whole gangster mob. The FBI is just nothing but gangsters. Then we have this picture. So this picture comes into question a lot, right? And the conspiracy of, was Jesse Jackson a CIA, FBI operative? The reason why this picture comes into a question a lot, people say if there's FBI documents and recordings that the assassin was told that if you are wearing, I'm gonna show this one more time, no collars on the shirt, that means they're friendly. If they wear a collared shirt that day, that means they had no idea this assassination was gonna happen. And then they said, if you notice, Jesse Jackson in every other picture has a collared shirt in every picture with Martin. Martin demanded it. There was even a conversation that day where Martin said to him, hey, we're going to dinner. You don't even have a suit and tie on. And he makes a joke where he says, a suit and tie is not a prerequisite of having an appetite. He always says that story. Jesse Jackson has always said this story since the beginning of because he was there that day, right? And there's some FBI documents that says that the assassin was told that whoever did not have a collared shirt was a friendly. Everyone else is considered a threat. Then we find that there was a lot of bugs and wiretaps and a lot of information getting to the FBI that only somebody that could know from Martin's inner circle. For instance, Martin had a couple affairs in his life. His phones were tapped. And so what was happening at the time when Martin was going to be assassinated, they were in Martin's inner circle were zeroing in on a couple people as to who is the mole, who's the rat, who's the snitch. Who is it? And at the very end, right before he was assassinated, they were saying Jesse Jackson was acting very peculiar and weird, moving around very weird. Once again, not showing up with a collared shirt. And these guys are very, very professional. Martin was very much about his look. And so when we sit back and we say, how was his phones getting bugged? Nobody was walking. It's not like the CIA just walks in this house. They had someone that Martin Luther King trusted that could be able to get in those spaces. So Jesse Jackson, we don't know, brother. But what we do know is they will use people very close to you. And also we see that as soon as Martin passed, you just shot to the top. You're running for president. You're the black new face of everything. Jesse, we seen how you talked about Barack Obama when he won the presidency. You did not like him. We all know you were these type of brothers like Jesse Jackson is a huge problem within the progression of black people. You always have, like I say, a nigga or two in the group who just want to be top dog. They don't care about nothing else. They want to be the HNIC, head and word in charge. And they will burn down a whole movement just to be the number one. And Jesse Jackson, from what I understand and what I hear, he has that personality. Because when you read in some of Martin, I was going through some of his stuff. Martin always said to Jesse Jackson, "You're too ambitious. Wait your turn. Relax." And Jesse was, "No, I want to be the guy." Martin was the guy. And so at the end, watch this. I'm going to send a link on here. Watch this video of Martin and Jesse Jackson's relationship. And at the very end, once again, like I'm going to say, Martin was very skeptical of Jesse because he was wondering, how does the FBI have all these tapes of me? How are they able to know certain things? There has to be somebody. And at the end of the speech where he says, "I've been to the mountaintop and I might not get there with you." You know that speech? His last speech, if you notice, they said when he walks off the floor, he stays away from Jesse Jackson. Maybe this is a conspiracy theorist. Who knows? But there's something about you, Jesse. And right now, you got to stand before God, Jesse. And I hope you didn't have anything to do with that. And being complicit, even being complicit in the simple fact of not saying anything to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is just as guilty. So brothers and sisters, what we have here right now is we have the passing of Jesse Jackson, who was a great leader, but part of us in a conscious community who studied and admire these brothers very much, you start seeing certain things within the movement to where you go, some of you ain't right. Certain things like Malcolm X, Malik Shabazz, he changed his name at the end of his life, falling out with the FOI, and then allowing for a vacuum to open up for the FBI to have influence and get people, his own people, to murder him. Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, his own military leader he appointed, has the French get in his ear and say, "You can have the power." And they murder him. Patrice Lumumba, his own college roommate, dorm roommate, went back to Africa and became the first democratic leader of the Congo. And his own roommate he went to college with and studied with betrayed him. And he was literally murdered, chopped into pieces. I think Belgium just sent him the tooth of Patrice Lumumba. So, brothers, right now this is a sad situation that Jesse Jackson is passed. But there's a lot of questions still unanswered about Jesse Jackson and his relations with the assassination of the great, if not one of the top 5 greatest leaders this world has ever seen, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. It's Black History Month, y'all. And, yeah. His name shows up in a lot of FBI files, redacted stuff. And so you look at Jesse, you look at him here in this picture. Just look at him. And if you guys ever known people to betray people, It's not the people who's gonna be a mile away from you. It's gonna be the people next to you. This is Jesse Jackson. That's Dr. King. And I think that's Bevel, or is that who is that? And then the other brother here. And right is when Jesse Jackson walks up to him. This is what Jesse Jackson says. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Where's your suit and tie?" And maybe Martin Luther King knew something. Like, he was moving weird. Like, you're moving weird. Like, you're dressing different. You know what I mean? And Jesse says, a suit and tie is not a prerequisite to having an appetite. Why does Jesse Jackson remember that so much? He might not have been the one who set it up, but he knew because they also say this same day, Martin was not supposed to be in this balcony hotel room. Someone called in and moved the room. And people still to this day wondering who moved his room. In fact, Martin wasn't even supposed to be at this hotel. Martin was supposed to be at a whole different hotel, but he was getting a lot of flack from the local community saying you need to be at a black-owned hotel. So they went to the Lorraine. And they said James Earl Ray was waiting in some tall tower, and then they point, and some say the wrong direction. Y'all know this photo. And they say Jesse Jackson says, because Jesse Jackson, after Martin Luther King passed, Jesse Jackson really was like hyping up his closeness to him. That's what a lot of people say. People say that Jesse Jackson would say, I was the last person to talk to Martin Luther King before he passed away. And people say, no, he wasn't. People say, Jesse Jackson says, I held him in his hands as he literally passed away. And everyone says, no, he did not. He was the last one up the stairs. You know? And, those are some wicked times, y'all. Wicked times. But this is when the new generation started coming in. This is our parents' generation. These are our parents' parents, guys, and some of our parents' parents' parents. Martin Luther King and them. Martin Luther King would just be in his 80s, 90s. He might have still been alive. And who knows what happened? But Jesse, you meeting Almighty God, hopefully you had nothing to do with that brother's assassination, and your complicitousness and your quietness within it, you're just as guilty. But rest in peace to the brother Jesse Jackson. That was a different time. He'll probably tell you have no idea what we were dealing with at that time. You know, born in 1941, slavery just had ended, 2 generations before you? You had the opportunity to go to college. Everybody wanted to be the man. And the struggle still continues. We still keep it pushing. But rest in peace to that brother, rest in peace to that whole generation. They're getting old, y'all. So it's our generation's turn to step up to the plate and create something. And these brothers here, they weren't super educated. They didn't all have PhDs. Dr. Martin Luther King had a PhD by the time he was like 25. Martin Luther King was not a joke. If you look at his life, it moved so fast. He was destined to be who he was. This man was in college by the time he was 16, PhD by the time he was 25, 26, married, kids, already a leader of SNCC, ordained minister. The brother was amazing. Jesse Jackson, same thing. But these brothers, like I said, these brothers weren't super educated like that. So when people say you need a great super education to be a leader, that's not true. But anyway, you guys know the slogan. See you later, gotta go.